Hello, and welcome to another episode of Painting with Traci. So today we're going to be working with a palette knife quite a bit. I think you'll really enjoy it. I have a lot of fun with it. It's different than using a brush. It steps you outside of your comfort zone and kind of expands that creative side of your mind just a little bit. We're also going to be working with my ever faithful 1.5 inch flat brush. I may throw in my 1/4 inch angle here and there and possibly my number 2 round, but we'll wait and let the painting tell us what we're going to actually do with it when we get there. So we're going to go ahead and start by wetting our canvas, reactivating that gesso on there. Again, you don't want to go with too much water. Too much water is going to cause you to make mud out of your paint. It's kind of a tricky thing with wetting the gesso. If you're going to do it, you want to make sure you get it wet enough to actually reactivate it, but not so wet that you're, again, making mud. I kind of like to tilt my canvas around a little bit as I'm getting it wet, and that allows me to see the sheen from the water. Today we're going to be painting poppies, poppy flower. Very first time I ever did this particular painting was actually at a paint night in Clackamas, Oregon, hosted by an amazing artist named Robin Lindsay. She's actually the very first person that I ever did anything like that with. I went to a paint night of hers after a girlfriend of mine had been begging me for months and months and months. And Robin was kind enough to let me sit there for her painting and share with me some brush control techniques and actually expose me to painting in general. I had no idea I could even do it till less than a year ago, to be honest with you. So, again, make sure you go in both directions with your brush so that the water is spread evenly around. We're just going to go ahead and get right into doing that background. So for this particular one, we're going to have a nice chunky background like I like doing. Some of you have watched the show previously will recognize it as my personal favorite. I'm going to pick up some white and I'm going to pick up some medium gray. Real quick before we get into it though, we're going to be using titanium white today, medium gray, turquoise green, cad yellow, and carmine red. Go ahead and start putting some paint on the canvas. As you're putting paint on the canvas, you want your brush as flat against it as you possibly can. That's going to get as much paint off the bristles as possible. Pick up a bunch more white, some more of this medium gray. Once you've got the paint off of your brush, go ahead and stand your brush up a little bit and use it like that to blend. In our last show, we've picked up a filbert to blend it out nice and evenly so we had a nice smooth gradient. We're not going to use the filbert today. We want it nice and chunky. We want the background to have shadows and highlights in all sorts of different places. Pick up some more of that gray. Just get it on there everywhere. Make sure that you get the edges of your canvas really good. If I don't plan on framing the painting, I will take it all the way around the edge to where it's wrapped. I feel like this particular painting is a standalone painting. It doesn't need a frame, so we're gonna go ahead and do that today. Got paint on there nice and now to get my sides, I'm just gonna come at it like so. The reason we do this, it gives it more of a gallery style finished look, whereas the last show that we did, we didn't do that, and that particular painting, to hang it on the wall, it's gonna make you feel like it needs a frame. You don't have to. Again, it's all about your own personal preference. Pick up a little bit more of this paint and blend. This outside edge here. Just a hair more paint on this. There we go. It was recently pointed out to me that I talk to my canvas quite a bit. did not realize I did that until we started filming. It's kind of funny the things you pick up about yourself that without seeing it through somebody else's eyes, you never would. So I'm gonna try to keep that in mind as I'm painting along today and keep my voice at a level where everybody can hear me, so I'm not mumbling or whispering. But it's okay to whisper at your canvas when you're at home. It's kind of like talking to your plants. I feel like it brings out the final image. I'm gonna go ahead and take a step back and look at my background. I'm super happy with the way that it shifts. I appreciate that I have some lightness here, a little bit of shadowing going on right here. Now that we've got that done, we're gonna go ahead and give it just a few minutes to dry, and we'll come back and we'll jump right into that palette knife. All right, now that we've given our background time to dry, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into the meat of our painting today. I mentioned earlier that we're gonna be using our palette knife. There's several different types out there. I'm particularly fond of this one. I don't know the technical term for it. I like to call it my pizza slice, because it takes on that particular shape. Now, we're gonna just, like I said, we're gonna just jump right into the meat of it, and we're gonna get the basic shape of our poppies installed. To do that, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick up some of this red right here. And you're just gonna dab your palette knife into the paint itself. And, got a little something on the side there. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick up just a little bit of gray on the very tip there, like that. So take a look at your canvas, figure out about where you want your flowers to sit. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna attempt to put 5 of them on here. It's a good idea to work with odd numbers. They call that the rule of thirds. Odd numbers are more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. So you're basically you'll cut the canvas into thirds. We'll go 1, 2 here. So we have 1, 2, 3 sections here. And we'll do the same horizontally, 1, 2, 3. Trying to leave this center space empty. Again, like I said, it's only because it makes it more aesthetically pleasing to the eye. But again, as I've always told you, do what makes you happy. It's your painting and your vision, so do what makes you happy and you comfortable. So now that we've got the paint on our palette, we're gonna take and we're gonna rest our hand on the canvas just a little bit, and we're gonna set that knife on there, and we're just gonna kind of scrape it right along like so. Go ahead and pick up a little bit more paint. You don't want to push too hard on your knife. You don't want to damage the background below. But you want to push hard enough to get that paint off of the palette. Do the same thing, only go in the opposite direction. I'm going to pick up more of this red here. There we go. Tiniest little bit of the gray. We're going to do the bottom side, and we're going to set it right here. And we're going to go, instead of going up, we'll go down. Just like so. See how that works? It gives you a center. And out of that center, once the paint is dried a little bit, we're gonna go ahead and put in our pestles. I do believe that's the scientific term for it. And we're just gonna move right on to our next flower here. We'll pick up a whole bunch more paint this time. Pick up a little bit of that gray there. We're gonna put that next one, oh, got some yellow on my finger there. We're gonna pick that next one right about here. So we're gonna go up and in, like so. Go ahead and pick up a little bit more paint. I do have some gray on here from before, but I'm gonna try to keep in mind where my palette knife is landing in the paint. So we keep the gray up near the very top. Pick up just a little bit more gray. Come right down off that guy there and bring it in. Go the opposite direction, bring it in. This is bordering on an abstract painting, so don't worry about it being perfect. I did have a little bit more yellow on my finger, and it ended up right there. So we're gonna try to incorporate that into our painting itself. We're gonna put our next poppy right down in that general area. Pick up a little bit more of the red, pick up a little bit of that gray like we've been doing. We're just gonna go ahead and put one right there. It's gonna be a little guy. It looks like that red just kind of wiped it right out. Bring that guy back around to that side. Same thing going that direction. Now, not particularly happy with the way that this is angled right there. Super easy fix, we're just gonna paint right over the top of it. Pick up some more of our red. A little bit more of that gray there. And just bring it around. Again, bringing it back a little bit this direction. And bring that guy up just a hair. And we're just gonna start over. There we go. Pick up some more red. Don't worry about your paint getting super thick. You can always just let it dry. In an effort to speed things along, you can pick up a hairdryer. If you do decide to use a hairdryer to dry your canvas, go ahead and try to keep that on low heat. The high heat will can change the color of your paint itself depending on who makes it and just how close you are to the paint, to the canvas. Let's get our top one in there. There we go. A little bit more paint. Not a whole lot this time because we've already got quite a bit on there. Just bring that around and give us that front. There we go. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So I had mentioned trying to get 5 of them on here. Take a second, take a look at your canvas, see where everything's sitting position-wise. I think we can do it. I think we can put our 5th one right up in here, or 4th one right up in here, and bring our 5th one right down here, and we'll be okay. Now, we are kind of encroaching on that center of the canvas, like I mentioned previously with the rule of thirds. That still counts because we don't have anything right smack in the middle of the canvas drawing your eye directly there. Your eye's allowed to wander around and pick up the whole thing. So, getting a lot of gray mixed in with our red right there, so I'm just gonna take it, I'm just gonna wipe my palette knife off on my paper towel or rag, depending on your own preference. I'd like to think of myself as a environmentally conscious person, so I try not to use paper towels when I'm at home. That being said, if you're reusing your cloth rags, you want to rinse them out really good in your sink before you put them in your washing machine. I learned that the hard way. Go ahead and pick up a bunch more of that red, a little bit of the gray. We're just going to come right up here and we're going to put this guy right here. There we go. Now, I move all over my canvas. I've got a little bit more experience with doing this than I used to, and in the beginning I would drag my hand through the paint and it would get everywhere. So just keep in mind that there is wet paint on your canvas. If that does happen, you can always just let it dry and paint over it, or you can incorporate that into your painting somehow. I'm going to go ahead and bring this guy right down into here and up. There we go. A little gray everywhere rather than just at the tip like I like it, so we're going to wipe that off. Pick up more of this here red, excuse me, carmine. There's so many different shades of red. Pick up a little of the gray. We're going to put in this last little poppy right down here. Bring it over. Pick up more of your carmine. Quite a bit at that time. So, you want to see, I don't know how well you can see that, but it's about that much paint. If I twist it sideways, can we get a good shot on that one? I don't know if that helps at all, but hopefully. We'll go ahead and pick up a little bit more of our gray. We'll do the same thing, we're going to bring it in. Now, if you're picking up more paint than you're putting down with your palette knife, just lighten your pressure. Put that in right there. Now you can see, based on the, I guess, darkness or texture of the poppies, you can see where my palette knife pressure was a lot heavier than in some spots. In this particular poppy, in this very first one, I pushed a lot harder. And so it thins the paint out and spreads it around. It's gonna give it a different kind of look and feel. It's all entirely up to you. So the next step is going to be to put in our stems and our leaves, but we're going to go ahead and let our poppies dry just a little bit before we jump into that. That way we're not smearing our wet paint all over the place. So like I said, we'll give it a moment or two to dry, folks, and we'll be right back with you. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my hairdryer and I'm going to speed along the drying process just a little bit. Now, I had mentioned just a moment ago that when you do decide to use a hairdryer on it to dry your paint, you don't want to use it on high heat. Most hair dryers will have a cool setting right on them. Go ahead and turn that baby on, and then just make sure you hold down that cool setting. I'm gonna go with a medium airflow on this particular one. You can go high if you want, but again, make sure that you're holding down that cool. So long to dry. You know, that's one of the things I really love about using the palette knife is the amount of texture that you can pull out of your paint with it. Super important to keep in mind that the more paint you have on your canvas, the longer it's going to take to dry. We're going to go ahead and hit it with a hairdryer one more time. All right, folks, now that we've given our poppies a little bit of time to dry, and we've even gone so far as to taking our hairdryer to it and basically formed a little crust on the top of our paint, we're gonna go ahead and jump right back in with our palette knife, and we're gonna work on our foliage. So to do that, we're gonna jump into a turquoise green and just lightly rest our palette knife in the top of that paint so you're not picking up a whole bunch. And we're gonna put the leaves on. Now, to do the leaves, you're just gonna rest your palette knife right there on the canvas. Do a couple more over here. Now, some people would do the stems first. I like to do the leaves first just because it's how it works for me. Throw one right down there. You can get a lot of texture out of this particular step. I don't know if I've got quite a bit of paint on the back of my palette knife there. And I'm letting that paint just kind of pull off when I pull the palette knife back off, and it creates ridges in your foliage there, giving it texture, giving it a lot of depth. I'll go ahead and stick one there, and we'll get crazy and put one up here. We'll go right there with one. Sometimes it'll flick paint off of the palette knife onto your canvas in random spots, like right there. I think that that's just fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that it gives it extra depth and dimension and basically just personality. We're gonna give it so much personality, we're gonna even give it an upside down leaf over here. There we go. Now you've got your leaves about where you want them. You're gonna wipe off some of this turquoise green that we have on the side there. We're just gonna pick it up on the side of our palette knife. We're just gonna reach right in here and just drag it down. Again, a little bit more paint. So you're right there in the middle of that leaf and just drag it on down. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's an abstract painting, so it definitely is gonna be all over the place anyway. If your stems aren't quite working out as well as you'd like, then go ahead and switch to your angle brush. Keeping in mind that it's an angle and you want to keep that tail at the back end of your stroke. We're just going to come right off the base of this. Bring that guy into there, bring that one down into there. this one here, we're just gonna bring it around into there. And it's all right if you pick up some of the red like I just did. It's an abstract painting. It does not have to be perfect. Let me bring this one on down. Come off of our leaf here, bring that one into there. Let's come off of this guy right here now. Do the same thing with this one over here. Just as you go, you can see what's happening with your canvas. You can feel what your painting wants it to do. And we're gonna bring that guy right around to here. And we're gonna even let that cross over into our red some. And just feed it right into that there. Wipe your brush off on your rag if you pick up some of that red and you don't want it on there anymore. Go right back into your turquoise green. We're gonna bring this guy right into here. This particular one, because he's upside down, we're gonna arc it really well. Bring that guy right there. Boom. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my brush off really well. I'm gonna go ahead and pick my palette knife back up. And we're gonna add in a little bit more of this foliage, only this time we're just gonna come right off of the stalk. Go right there. And just wherever you feel like putting it, pretty much. I'm gonna put one right there. And I think we're gonna go ahead and throw one more right there. Take a step back, take a good look at your canvas. Kind of feel where everything's at, kind of get a good feel for it. If you're not happy with something, let it dry a little bit, paint over it, or turn it into something else. There's a whole bunch of different directions you can go with this particular painting at this point. You can add in more poppies, you can add in highlights around your flowers themselves. You can add in more highlights around your foliage here. We're gonna let this one dry just a hair more before we do too much more to it. A good way to tell whether your paint's dry and you're ready to start painting over the top of it again is gonna be your shine. Acrylic paint is gonna shine quite a bit when it's wet. As it dries, it gets a lot flatter. It's more of a matte finish, I'd say, than a gloss. A really good way to notice that in this particular painting is this flower versus this flower here. This one's a lot thinner and it's already quite dry. It's got kind of a flatter, more matte finish. Whereas this guy right down here has got a whole bunch of paint on there and you can see how shiny it is. I'm not gonna touch it right now because I guarantee it's still wet. But it's a good way to gauge whether it's safe to start adding paint and building on top of it or not. Kind of depends again on what kind of a feel you're going for. If you want a really messy finish, you can go ahead and do like we did with our stalk right here and let it drag right through that wet paint. A couple other things you can do with this particular canvas if you'd like is you can set the depth of your poppies by say running your stalk over the top of another one, which is going to bring that particular flower forward and shove the one that it's going over the top of back into your canvas. It's always a good idea to do that with traditional, say, oh gosh, I don't want to say portrait style painting because I definitely can't do that, but more where you're actually trying to get a good realistic landscape going on. With the abstract, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can if you want. Again, it's all about preference. I'm super happy with what we've got going on right here though, so I'm not gonna drag my stem over any of the existing flowers. I don't want to drag that red down through my canvas anywhere. So we're gonna go ahead and give this just a few more minutes to dry. I'm gonna take the hairdryer to it again and dry it off a little bit, but I'm not gonna make you listen to or watch that boring part. And we'll be right back after we've gotten a little further in the drying process. And we're back. So after letting our paint dry just a little bit, it's looking like our gray that we put in these couple of flowers right here it's fading away into the red and it's disappearing. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick up my rake. I had talked about this one in a previous episode. It's very similar to a fan brush in that, you know, it's got the bristles at the top that spread out. The only difference between this and a fan brush is one, a fan brush obviously spreads out quite a bit more at the top, and the bristles are even all the way across. Whereas with a rake, go ahead and set that down over there. Our rake is, this particular one doesn't spread out near as much as the fan, and our bristles are spaced out, kind of resembling a yard rake. So what we're gonna do with that is I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this gray and some of this red that I've got mixing right here on my palette. More gray than red. And if red's another one of those super heavily pigmented colors that will take over, much like black. It's another good one. Red is, however, very translucent by itself. Let's see, so we got a nice, I'm pretty happy with that particular shade there. And I'm just gonna go in, and keeping in mind that my leaves are still pretty wet, I'm just gonna go ahead and just kind of put a little bit of accent in the top. Not a lot, hardly any pressure. Keeping that arc. And your paint is still pretty wet right here on this flower, so it's gonna blend a little bit. Don't worry, it's totally fine. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna pick up a little bit more of this gray right over here. Wipe some of that off, and we're gonna do the same thing right here. Now I feel like the back side of our petal here, the back side of our flower looks pretty good, but we're kind of lost on this gray accent right here along the front, so I'm just gonna go ahead and let the rake just kind of slide right over the top. Do a little bit more on this one up here. And maybe just a hair right here in the middle on this guy. Not much. Just a little bit. Just so that way you have a definition between the front of your flower and the back of the flower there. And rinse our brush off really good. Try to keep that ferrule up out of the water when you're rinsing your brush. I forget quite often, so I'm reminding myself as well. And then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick up my damp cloth that I've got here, damp towel, and I'm gonna wipe off as much of this green as I can. Just as much as I possibly can. We're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start working on our pestle now. So to do that, I'm gonna do it similar to the way that we were gonna do our stems there. I'm just gonna pick up this cad yellow right here on the side. And I'm gonna come from the top this time, and I'm gonna line it up right there with and just set it right down. Similar to that one there, and we're gonna do that one over there. You're just gonna keep doing that all the way around. You're kind of arcing it off just a hair. This guy's only gonna have 2 of them on there. And just keep going around. Keep in mind that if your carmine is very wet, your yellow can become orange very easily. It's not a bad thing, it's just a different shade. And drop a 3rd one very gently right there. There we go. Wiping it off some. Go ahead and go right back into your cad yellow. Maybe a little bit more on the tip than we have on the back side of the palette knife there. We're just gonna do one little pestle off this one right here, just to kind of change things up a little bit, keep things different. And this guy, that's super ambitious, and he's gonna grow 4. He really wants to be a pollinator. Step back, take a good look at your canvas. I'm gonna go back in with my palette knife, and I'm gonna, just with the tip, I'm gonna pick up a bunch of that cad yellow right there. And I'm gonna just drop it into the top of each one of these. Kind of at a horizontal. You wanna, it's kind of an oval shaped top to it, not necessarily a ball per se. Do the same thing all the way around. Doesn't have to worry, don't worry about being perfect, don't worry about it being uniform or anything. This is an abstract painting. Go ahead, keep going. Just keep going all the way around. We're gonna make this one right here that's got the one little pestle. We're gonna make that a really ambitious top though. We're gonna make him super big. There you go. And this little guy who grew 4, and one there, little one right there. A little bit more paint. If your little toppers here are getting too big, go ahead and just wipe the excess paint off on your damp rag and go right back into your yellow. Pick up a little bit more paint. There we go, and there we go. Beautiful, folks. So I'm gonna say that this one is pretty much done at this point. Don't forget to sign your painting. Don't forget to send them in so I can see what you've done with it. And you folks have yourself a wonderful day.